So I just want to thank everyone for coming, but we're about to start.
How's everybody doing? Hello, my name is Rasheem Muhammad. I go to Urban Science Academy. I'm about to do a spoken word piece for you guys. It's titled, Tonight is the Night. Tonight is the night. It's October 12th, 2007. I was about 7, and for the first time in almost 3 years, I get to hang out with my favorite cousins again. So you already know it's about to be lit. They got mad superhero toys, and some even come with the dart action fists. This is about to be fun, so you can't tell me shh. Auntie knocks on the door to notify us there's a special event happening at church tomorrow. Oh boy, it's about to go down. I didn't bring anything fancy to wear over with for me. So Auntie supplies me with a super duper baby blue suit. I'm a little mortified because I look like some kind of tropical fruit, but it doesn't matter though, because tonight is the night. That evening we racked up on all the Dollar Tree toiletries thinking we walking in the service fresher than a pair of skin knees. That night we threw on music, threw off shoes, lids to shoe boxes, searching for the perfect fit, trying on different shirts, taking turns to present, staying up at least 3 hours over my curfew, a feat never before accomplished, one of the benefits of hanging out with older cousins. When morning came, we ate breakfast. We then threw on our Sunday best, even though it wasn't Sunday, but it was the first day of my life, all wore fancy dress shoes. But the clicking they made on the ground grew duller with each step we took to the church. When I burst through the double doors, my upward-looking mug was greeted by folks with wet faces and red eyes. I realized that we were the only ones in the room smiling. I was confused, but that didn't faze me. But I wondered why somebody would be sleeping during their own party. I wondered why nobody smiled when they greeted me. I sat down to peer through the glass of the balcony. I could still see the face of the boy in the center of the room sleeping peacefully. Didn't bother me. There was no food in the tunes a week. Silently, I scrunched up my face and nodded off to sleep. October 13th, 2007. I was about 7. 7 plus 7 equals 14. Take away 1, he was 13 when he died. The year was 2007. I was about 7. 7 billion people in the world, take away 1, but I didn't realize. I wish I could remember when his mother stood up on the pulpit with her black dress and purple scarf saying that she had a breakthrough that would help me break through my childish ignorance. When I think about it now, I wish I had said sorry, peacefully, as I bowed my head down and prayed for her family's peace. Respectfully, thinking about how easy it could have been me, peacefully, sleeping in a coffin while they're mourning me. October 4th, 2007. I was about 7. He was 13, walking back home after a game of basketball. I don't think he had any idea that they were waiting for him. I wish that when he walked outside that door that morning, he knew that tonight was the night. If he did, then maybe he could have stayed home and got ready for the event. Thank you very much.
Rasheem, excellent work. Thank you. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. I am Reverend Liz Walker, and I am so excited and honored to be a part of this evening's solution session. Just the name there is wonderful. We usually meet and talk about problems. Tonight we're going to talk about solutions to problems. What is going right for my community, for our young men of color, and for all of us. So I am honored to be a part of this. As you know, My Brother's Keeper was started in 2014 when, wait for it, President Obama, my president, issued a challenge to the nation to do something positive, to bring our ideas together, to bring our resources together, and to support our young men of color. And he challenged communities around the country, including Boston, on that. And Boston Mayor Marty Walsh took up the challenge. So tonight, we're going to talk about My Brother's Keeper initiative. We're going to talk about solutions in this community. We have milestones that we are going to focus on. This is going to be an interactive evening, so there are some boards hanging up around the room here where if you have ideas, something has been said, you have been moved, you have been touched, you have been challenged, we want you to put your ideas on Post-it notes because we're all in this together. As we know, it takes a village, and we are going to have an exciting evening. We have much to discuss. We will have a panel. We have the mayor on his way. But right now, I'd like to introduce to you the man who is absolutely responsible for My Brother's Keeper around the country. Broderick D. Johnson currently serves My Brother's Keepers Alliance as chairman of the board of directors. Most recently, Mr. Johnson served in the Obama administration. Again, let me just say, that's my president. I can't help it. I don't know what a president is anymore, but I know what Obama was about, and I miss you, I miss you, I miss you. Johnson served as the Obama administration as assistant to the president and cabinet secretary. He also served the My Brother's Keeper task force as chair since its inception in February of 2014. Before joining the Obama administration, Johnson was a partner and co-founder of the strategic consulting firm, the Collins Johnson Group. Immediately before that, he was a partner in the international law firm Bryan Cave. And he has served in numerous other senior positions in the private and public sectors. Mr. Johnson also occasionally serves as a visiting professor at his alma mater, the University of Michigan Law School. He is a very busy man, but he is very committed to our future through the lives and through the interest of our young men. So ladies and gentlemen, won't you help me welcome Mr. Broderick Johnson, who is with My Brother's Keeper.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction and for your incredibly kind words about my former boss, my dear friend, the President of the United States, Barack Obama. So I have to say first, though, toward the end of your remarks, I saw a guy walking down the street here in a blue and white football jersey. And on the back of his jersey, it was number 19, it said, Johnny Unitas. So I'm like, wait a minute now, I'm from Baltimore. I was a big Johnny Unitas fan. I'm like, well, where's that brother get that shirt from? Because I want to get that shirt. I think he's right over here. Would somebody go get it for me? Because I would love to take it back home. Hello, everybody, and good evening. It is such a pleasure for me to be in Beantown today for your first MBK Solution session. Are there any baseball fans here? Could you just raise it? Okay, all right, guess sort of. Well, I've been a baseball fan all my life, football and baseball. Having grown up in Baltimore, and I'm just gonna put it out there, just get the bad news out of the way first, perhaps for you Boston Red Sox fans, but the Orioles beat the Red Sox last night, 7-5. A weekend sweep might be in order, I'm just saying. Okay, I'm just saying, so. This city, let me get a little personal here. This city and this state have been a big part of my life for decades. When I was 12 years old, I attended a Catholic seminary in Lenox, Massachusetts. Thought I had the calling to be a priest. That ended quickly when a couple of us young seminarians went to the movies in Pittsfield. We met a couple of young girls at the movie theater, sneaked off to spend, we were seminarians now, remember, sneaked off to spend a few hours listening to Jackson 5 music and at one of their houses. It was all very innocent, but we almost missed the bus back to the seminary. And so that's when the priesthood stuff kind of went away from me. I went to undergraduate school at Holy Cross, right down there in Worcester, just a few miles from here, so to speak. They were very formative years of my life. Should note that the Holy Cross baseball team won the Patriot League. I notice all things sports. And finally, I'd like to say that my family and I spend a lot of time on Martha's Vineyard. We go there for the solitude and the sunsets and the lobster and to spend holidays together. So Massachusetts, quite literally, has always been a second home to me. So it is great to be here in Boston and to be here to talk about My Brother's Keeper, Boston. It's an honor to bring greetings and gratitude on behalf of the entire MBK family, including the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, who indeed was the true visionary around my brother's keeper. Every day, as you noted, every day folks ask me to tell the former President and First Lady that they miss them badly. You could probably circle the globe with the number of people who ask and feel that way every day. I'm sure that's a sentiment across this room. I miss them deeply too, even though I do get to see them back in DC fairly regularly. I even miss the anxiety I used to feel when I'd get a phone call or an email and they would say, the President would like you to come down to the Oval Office. He has something he wants to talk to you about. I remember that anxiety. It was kind of a flesh feeling like, oh, I got to go down there and be on my best. But I do kind of miss that. But seriously, I miss so much about his leadership, his insistence that we resist the kind of cynicism that denies the existence of climate change, or his insistence that we not fall prey to the kind of hatred that hangs nooses in national museums or spray paints the N-word on LeBron James's home. If the President were here with us this evening, he would remind all of us to not give up and to not give in to the poisons of cynicism and hatred. And if President Obama were here tonight, he would personally thank Mayor Walsh, this great city of Boston, all of you for taking up the call to be an example for the rest of this nation about what it truly means to be an MBK community. He would thank you, Conan Harris, and to everyone on the Boston MBK Task Force for your deep commitment to this mission. Since he can't be here tonight, I proudly am here to express those sentiments on behalf of President Obama. Way to step up, Boston. You were one of the first cities to accept the MBK call to action, and from the very beginning, you have focused on building a powerful movement that is making a significant difference in the lives of Boston's boys and young men of color. You are indeed making things happen here in Boston. For example, your mayor's mentoring movement has met its goal early of recruiting 1,000 new mentors, starting with city employees. The majority of supervisors managing youth employees within Boston's Department of Youth Engagement and Employment summer and year-long employment programs were trained in trauma-informed practices. The State Street Foundation launched Boston Wins, a 4-year, $20 million effort aimed at advancing job readiness for low-income youth, especially boys and young men of color. And your Violence Interrupters program is engaging thousands of young people and having a profound success in mediating conflicts and stopping retaliatory violence. So we've been watching Boston. You have been laser focused on results and cross-sector collaboration. We have been telling others in other cities across this nation to watch you, to watch Boston and to learn from you, because you are doing an extraordinary job tackling the tough issues and making a real difference. And yet, as you all would acknowledge, we certainly have a long, long way to go. If President Obama were here tonight, he would insist on being able to listen to the young folks who are here in Boston, to get their views on what it takes to keep them safe and on the path to positive and productive lives. So, in that vein, earlier today I had the distinct honor of participating in a dialogue with dozens of boys and young men of color here in Boston, including 2 of your most acclaimed young citizens, MBK Boston board members Devin Edwards and Malachi Hernandez. Are they here? Would you please stand, both of you? So I am very confident that either of these young men could work in senior positions in the White House one day. In fact, that one of them could be Commander-in-Chief. They are extraordinary leaders. They have had the honor of introducing the President at formal White House events, or in Devin's case, at the ESPN Town Hall of addressing the President. So they are well poised, and they are great leaders. And it is so important that young folks like them be on boards like the MBK board here in Boston, because it's not just about listening to them or giving them a seat at the table, but it's about what we can learn from them. And because of the extraordinary example they set, not just for us, but for young people who will be their protégés as they go through life as great mentors. So it's great to see both of you. I could not be more proud of them, and in fact, all the young men who we spoke with earlier today. The passion in their voices, how honest they are about the things that they need in order to succeed, was all conveyed to us earlier today, and I take those messages back to Washington to inform our MBK work. The challenges faced by our boys and young men of color especially are complex and structural, and no single organization has a solution or all the answers. That is why President Obama launched MBK from the East Room of the White House more than 3 years ago. And I want to set this stage because sometimes we miss the symbolism of things. President Obama launched MBK from the East Room of the White House on February the 27th, 2014, with a group of boys and young men of color from Chicago and DC behind him. You know, this is something that adults oftentimes, sort of corporate CEOs and others, sort of fight for the opportunity, almost literally, to stand behind a president and to be in the photo shoot. The president insisted that we have boys and young men of color behind him, and they received the pens that he signed the proclamation with. We didn't time it this way, but the 1964 Civil Rights Act was signed in that same East Room of the White House almost 50 years to the day. And talk about a symbol of the importance of MBK to President Obama as a way to better and more forcefully implement the ideals of that 1964 Act should be lost on no one. I would just ask you, go take a look. Take a look at the bill signing for the 1964 ceremony and then the 2014 signing of the Presidential Memorandum of MBK, and you'll get a sense of what has mattered so deeply to President Obama. That night, that day, he brought together business leaders and faith leaders, mayors, philanthropists, educators, entrepreneurs, athletes, musicians, and again, young people themselves to talk about giving back and opening doors of opportunity for all of our youth. The results since then have been extraordinary and in many ways have exceeded our own early expectations. There are more than 250 MBK communities in all 50 states, Puerto Rico and DC. Scores of new federal programs and partnerships were initiated, and more than $1 billion in private sector commitments were established. Well, we don't have the White House anymore. We don't have the broad reach of all those agencies. So our work so largely now has to be done out of communities across the country and with the work of the private sector and organizations like the Boston Foundation here in Boston. Our work at the MBK Alliance, which is now central to the continuation of President Obama's work, has 3 central categories. We're a convener, a connector, and a change agent to support local communities like Boston. Oftentimes I get asked, so is President Obama going to continue this work as we go forward? Is he going to continue to embrace the work through My Brother's Keeper Alliance? I can certainly say to all of you that the fact that he asked me, someone who had been one of his leaders on this work in his White House, to then go to the MBK Alliance board as the chairman of the board speaks volumes about his commitment to this work and about the importance of having people help drive this work on behalf of the national leadership in Washington, but to support local communities like this one. And let me close with this anecdote about the importance of MBKA to President Obama from the beginning. The My Brother's Keeper Alliance was started in May of 2015, a little over a year after we had launched MBK in the White House as a federal task force. And in May of 2015, when Malachi and I were with President Obama in the Bronx to announce the creation of the MBK Alliance, President Obama took a moment during his remarks to speak directly to Malachi and the other young men gathered. And Malachi, you remember this. You see, earlier in the day, Malachi and President Obama had a very poignant exchange where they discussed one critical thing that they shared in common, among others, but this sort of heartbreaking thing, and that is the absence of a dad in their lives as they rode toward the path to manhood. Malachi and the president talked about this and the importance of being able to become better role models in men as they grew older. So later in his own formal remarks before a crowd of several hundred, the president said, and again, this was at the launch of MBKA, the nonprofit, he said, quote, My message to Malachi and all the young men out there and young boys who aren't in this room, who haven't yet gotten that helping hand, haven't yet gotten that guidance, I want you to know you matter. You matter to us, you matter to each other. And then the president said, there is nothing, not a single thing that's more important to the future of America than whether or not you, Malachi, and young people all across this nation can achieve your dreams. The former president, I can tell you, holds firm to the belief that the future of this country is inextricably linked to the success of all boys and young men of color. That is a commitment that I know we all share. It is a commitment that we will continue through MBKA to support local communities in the work that you do. So let me just say again, thank you to Mayor Walsh, to you, Conan, to the MBK Task Force, the citizens of Boston, but most of all to all the young brothers who are here with us, who are making the vision of MBK real and lasting. Thank you on behalf of a grateful nation. This city is a shining example of a community rising up to fulfill the president's vision for MBK. So let's have a great discussion about solutions, because it is about what works, not just that we talk about the problems, but that we talk about the solutions. And here in Boston, you all are doing some great work with these solutions. So God bless all of you. It's great to be back here in Massachusetts, and it's great to be back in my second home. So thank you.
Thank you for those remarks, Broderick. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Boston. My name is Niobli Arma IV. I work for Bloomberg Associates, and I'm just here to bring brief remarks about a partnership we have with the city of Boston. Bloomberg Associates is a nonprofit consulting firm that was set up when Michael Bloomberg left office to help municipal governments around the world achieve outcomes in the areas of their choosing. I have the privilege of working on the social service team with Linda Gibbs hiding in the back, and our job is to go around the country and help cities who took on the MBK challenge. And I say that we have a privilege of doing that work and serving the cities. And just to go back to something you said, Broderick, the fact that local government across the country has discussions about young men and boys of color now is one of the greatest things that came out of President Obama's administration. There was no title in municipal government called MBK Director before the MBK Community Challenge. And so I always want to remind people that we know that some of the systems in our country disparately create disparities. And the fact that we now have mechanisms in place to address those disparities is worth celebrating. In addition to that, I'm a fan of the work in Boston. Everyone knows I'm from Houston, and so that's the only other city that I always tout about. But Conan knows that the work you all are doing here in Boston, we're proud of it. The country's watching. We know that this work is going to be done in a labor of love, and we know it's not going to be done overnight. And so for those of us looking for small and quick wins, we know that's not what this body of work is about. It's about the long haul. And the fact that we're here today to talk about solutions, about the long haul of work that needs to be done in Boston and will be done and has started to be done is exciting. And so we're looking forward to being a continued partner in this work. We're going to continue to show up. We celebrate the announcement of the new board, and I'm just looking forward to rolling my sleeves up and supporting all the magnificent work that's going to happen in this great city. With that being said, I do want to bring up the next gentleman to bring remarks is Devin Edwards, and as he comes up, everyone celebrate Devin. And so I didn't know Devin until Greensboro at the convening, and I had the luxury of getting to hang out with this young man at the ESPN town hall. And what makes this work so rich and why I enjoy it so much is that this is not a profession for us. This is life. And so whenever we get to sit down and break bread with these young men, it's inspiring to me, and it gives us something to look forward to and hope. So I just want to thank Devin publicly for inspiring me to come to work every day, because I know the work's not in vain.
Appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. How you doing today?
That's good to hear. I am 22 years old. My name is Devin Edwards. I was born in the South End, a predominantly Black and Latino community. My mother, a single parent, worked hard to raise 3 kids and provide us with great education. I went to Roxbury Prep for middle school and Crystal Ray Boston for high school. Unfortunately, I made some bad decisions that threw me off track. I had encounters with the police officers to dealing with drugs that was senseless. I needed to deal with those drugs in which provided me with an income as well. In 2012, I lost my father. That added to me, just being more involved in the streets, despite my mother's great efforts to try to keep me out of the streets. At that time in life, it was easier to make money on the streets, and it was easier to make money in a position that I would be in office. I wasn't working, so I had to provide for myself, and that was the streets. In the last 2 years, I have enrolled in college bound Dorchester, where I obtained my GED. I ran into a street worker since I was in the streets, which connected me to Operation Exit program. She happens to be a family friend. I'm not sure if she's here right now, but she happens to be a family friend, which probably saw me in diapers. It was great that we were able to reconnect. I have gone on and completed programs such as Resilient Coders, where a group of young men learned how to build websites and apps in 8 weeks, and we got paid. To Professional Pathways, in which is where I interned for the City of Boston's Health and Human Service Department. Shortly after I started the internship with the City of Boston, I became more involved in My Brother's Keeper. Months after, I landed a full-time employment with the City of Boston, working for a cabinet chief as executive assistant. Felix Arroyo, you here? Thank you. I had the chance to speak to President Barack Obama on the lack of opportunities for boys and young men of color like myself. I have also spoken at the White House on the summit. Currently, I am working for the State Representative Russell Holmes for the 6th Suffolk District. Yes, thank you. I never saw myself in a State House position. I didn't believe in the government for a while. You know why? Because for a while I saw my peers and just my friends and my family members being harassed by the police. There was nothing in which that the police force served us. There was nothing in which the police force served us in a proactive manner. I lost numerous friends and family members due to gang violence, which takes a heavy toll on me every day. Just last week, I lost my 22-year-old friend from the South End. The presence of My Brother's Keeper has changed my life for the better. I couldn't express how multiple instances and opportunities has helped me grow professionally and personally in many ways. My Brother's Keeper and brothers like Conan Harris have truly inspired me and numerous other brothers to continue to thrive amongst what society projects us to be. It has shown me the power of mentorship. I want to thank you all, and I want to thank, most importantly, those who do this work day in and day out to continue to provide opportunities for brothers like myself. And with that being said, I have the privilege to introduce this great brother, whom I love so much, and I look to in reverence because of his passion and his devotion for the community and for young men like myself. Ladies and gentlemen, my brother, who I love dear-heartedly, Conan Harris.
So what I want to do before we continue is I kind of want to set a tone. I love that we're all gathered around, but I'm going to ask us that if we're going to make noise, to please go out that way and make noise, because I think that there's some things up here that I want everybody to hear, so I'm going to ask us to be respectful of what's taking place. And this is all love, so I just wanted to say that. One of the things my name is Conan Harris. I have the privilege to be the director of My Brother's Keeper. And I work for the Mayor's Office of Public Safety as well, along with my colleague and brother, Dan Mohern, Gina Patterson, and Linda Lowe Priori. Before I get into talking about what we're doing with My Brother's Keeper, I just want to acknowledge the mayor, my brother, my friend, my boss, but one of the gentlemen that asked me to step in and do My Brother's Keeper. And he asked me, and at first I was hesitant, not because I don't love the mission, but because I wanted to make sure that we were serious as a city at what we were doing. Being from all parts of this community, it is so imperative and so important to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help with the equity of our young black and brown boys. The greatest thing about it is that when I asked him the question, are we serious? He looked dead in my eyes and said, absolutely. And so it's been a privilege. I've come on since August of 2016. I want to recognize a few people. I want to say thank you, Broderick, for coming down. The greatest gift that I have recognizing you is that I am an example of you. I'm a reflection of you. I am you. And it felt so good being able to go down to the White House and see that brother, and then come all the way to Roxbury and see that same brother, and it's never changed. That is a beauty. That's what my brother's keeper is all about. I want to give another shout out to Bloomberg Associates, because when I came on in 2016 in August, one of the things that we was trying to figure out is, what is my brother's keeper? What is it really about? We started in Boston, but now we wanted to build 2.0 in a real way. And I asked Bloomberg to come out to help us with some strategic planning, and they jumped right on board. They have been my family since then. So I just want to give them acknowledgement and a round of applause. I would be remiss if I sat here at this lectern and did not acknowledge my kitchen team. I want to acknowledge Gina Patterson, who's the first lady at MBK 2.0. As soon as I decided to be a part of my brother's keeper, she said, where do I sign up? So I just want to give Gina Patterson a round of applause. Ava Mitchell, who was sent to me through an angel, Makiba McQuarrie, and said, here, won't you support Conan and MBK 2.0? And since she's come on, we've been better and stronger because of it. I just want to acknowledge you, Ava Mitchell. Thank you very much for your support. Selena Barros Miller, Thaddeus Miles, and Ed Powell, you guys have stepped up to the plate from the beginning. We're going to get more into the board moving forward, but I just want to say a special thank you, because when we're talking about my brother's keeper and when we're talking about community, when I made the call, they picked up the phone. And that's what this is about. And I just want to acknowledge you and say thank you publicly. I want to acknowledge my beautiful wife and friend and partner, city councilor at large, Ayanna Presley. Where is she at? I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the person who gave me life, who has had the opportunity of coming down here from North Carolina to come see her son, to make sure that she is here in support of the work that we are doing, but also making sure that her son can look behind his back and, like always, know that she got me. So I thank you, moms. Since August of 2016, we had an opportunity to do a strategic plan in partnership with Bloomberg Associates. One of the things that happened immediately after that is we partnered up with the Boston Foundation in the city of Boston and came up with a program called My Brother's Keeper Mini Grant. The mindset behind My Brother's Keeper Mini Grants was to acknowledge our grassroots organizations that sometimes get left behind, sometimes that do not get recognized and get the support that they deserve, but are the ones doing the work in our community every day. And so one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that as we came out, we wanted to support that movement, understanding that My Brother's Keeper is not a nonprofit. We did not want to reinvent the wheel. People are doing great work in this city every day. We wanted to acknowledge that work and enhance it and make sure that we're supporting those efforts. I always say this to the mayor, and I say it to my colleagues often. I have the opportunity to be a director, but I am not the owner. There's brothers and sisters that have been doing the work of My Brother's Keeper long before I've come along, and they will do it long after I'm here. So I want to thank you for that work that you continue to do. Please give yourself a round of applause. I had an opportunity today to bear witness to something that was great. It almost brought tears to my eyes because I had the opportunity to be at the Jeremiah E. Berg School with 20 young freshmen and sophomores, with MBK ambassadors, young men that are from the ages 20 to 23 years old. And they was facilitating a conversation with our young brothers about graduating from high school, college ready. It was so important for us to have a hands-off as adults. And when I text these young brothers in the morning, I said, a lot of times people say, let's hear from the young people. Let's listen to the young brothers. And I said, I'm listening, lead. I'm listening, lead. It's so important to empower our young brothers as well as empowering our grassroots organizations. They have the answer. They're on the ground. I never want to stand at this pulpit and feel like we have all the answers. We're only going to be better through the hands, through the lives, through the connectedness, and through the collaboration of community. We're no good in My Brother's Keeper Boston without you. I want you to look at each other because we're no good without you. Ambassadors, stand up, please. The reason why I say that is because I want these young brothers to know when I continue to push this forward is that I do this work, we do this work for you. For you and you only. Before I bring up this next gentleman who's going to speak, who's our mayor, I want to say this. I had an opportunity to travel around to different cities. At the convening at the White House, our mayor spoke, and we was in the back of the room like children, man, just so happy, joyful, because we had an opportunity to watch our young people from Boston shine and do excellent, introduce the president, be on a panel. We was giddy, hugging each other, high-fiving. We was just so happy to see these young brothers doing so good. Later on, I went up to the reception. And a lot of folks from different cities came up to me and said, hey, man, I like your mayor. He looked like if you got into a fight, he would jump in. And you know what I said? He will. He absolutely will. But let me tell you how he's jumped in. With hands and feet. When it comes to social justice issues, he's jumped in. When it comes to talking about race in a real way, he's jumped in. With acknowledging that our city is not perfect and we have more work to do, he's jumped in. He is my mayor, he is my friend, he is my brother, and I'm so glad that we're working together on this issue of My Brother's Keeper. I want to bring him up to the stage, our mayor, your mayor, Martin J. Walsh.
Thank you. Thank you, Conan. And if I have to jump into a fight with Conan, something's wrong. And I'm talking about not the fight, the fight. This is a pretty emotional day for me, sitting here and walking in. Actually, I came to the second floor and walking down and seeing so many people here 2 years into my brother's keeper. I want to thank a bunch of people first. Let me just get the thank yous out of the way. Elected officials, I want to thank you, Ayanna Presley, who's been a supporter from the very beginning. I want to thank you, Representative Russell Holmes, who's been a supporter from the very beginning. I want to thank you, Felix Arroyo, Clerk Felix Arroyo. You've been a supporter from the very beginning. Tito Jackson was here earlier, I believe. I want to thank Councilor Jackson as well for his support from the very beginning. Any other elected officials, if I miss you, I'll catch you in a few minutes. There's a whole bunch of people we could name. Commissioner Bill Evans, thank you very much for your support. Superintendent Chief Willie Gross, thank you for your support. The Boston Police Department started that walk, the Father's Day walk, along with some other folks saying that let's do this walk, not in response to the Mother's Day Walk for Peace, but can we do this? And that's how that walk started. I want to thank the police department. Broderick Johnson, thank you for coming to Boston. I'm going to talk about you a little bit more in a minute. Thaddeus Miles and Joe Fista for chairing the board. Thank you very much for chairing the board. But also not just that, the work you've done over the years. It's being recognized. I want to thank the young men and women that are here. Most importantly, the young men and women that are here. You are the heart of my brother's keeper, and you certainly are the heart and the future of the city of Boston. So thank you. In my own cabinet in office, John Barros is one of the first people at the table. Thank you, John, when we started this conversation. Felix Arroyo was one of the first people who was at the table when we started this conversation. Ron Dorsey, who's Chief of Education, was one of the first people at the table when we started this conversation. Austin Blackman was one of the first people at the table when we started this conversation. Dr. Superintendent Tommy Chang, who's here with us as well from the school department. Thank you. Reverend Liz Walker, thank you for your spiritual guidance, but also what you do every single day in our city. Greg Hill, Mel King. I was looking at Russell Holmes, and I saw Mel King over there, and I thought to myself that I know that this was started really by President Obama having a conversation, but it really was started by Mel King, your generation. So. What's interesting about life is you always learn. You always learn. And I try to take every opportunity in my life to learn from experience. I'm going to talk about the Washington, D.C. in a minute with these two guys. But President Obama, when he was in Boston back in sometime in 2014, I was just newly elected mayor of the city of Boston. I was asked to go to a fundraiser. Many of you heard the story. The fundraiser was over at the Habitat for Humanities. There was a private reception in the back to take a picture of the president, and the president came out, and he's a Democratic fundraiser, and what he talked about was the future of the country, but what he really talked about was this program he wants to start. And he talked about the program in the context of racism, and he talked about, more importantly, the context of slavery and the impacts that slavery has on young people today in America. Even though slavery was in the 1800s and the 1700s and the 1600s and the 1500s and the 1400s, he talked about it, and I thought it was interesting. He locked me in. And I went out to him that night afterwards. We got a chance to take a picture of him afterwards. I said, Mr. President, whatever program you do for black and brown boys, I'm in Boston, because I'm the mayor of Boston, and one of the things that we have the challenge with, and this is before Ferguson happened, by the way, and other things. And I said, we have challenges in Boston and America on race and racism that we really have to deal with. And I think My Brother's Keeper can be one way to start to work on the issues around race and racism. So we left there, and we got invited down, and Broderick was there. We got invited down to the first My Brother's Keeper announcement in D.C. at the White House. We went there, and I said to the president that day, I whispered in his ear, I said, this is going to be the best My Brother's Keeper chapter in the country here in Boston, and when you're done as president, long after you're done, we're going to be strong here in Boston. And I went down to the African American Museum 2 weeks ago with the Chamber of Commerce. Some of you were there. And if you haven't been to the museum, you start down on the very bottom of the museum and you work your way up to the top. And when you go down to the bottom of the museum, it starts in the 1400s, and you just listen to stories and artifacts as you walk through. And as I was going through the exhibit, something for me personally, something to what President Obama said back at the Habitat for Humanity's, actually Out of Humanity's event, when he talked about racism being kind of generational and not being let go. And I started thinking, because I hear people all the time, well, you know, some people you talk to, they'll say, you know, slavery was a long time ago, you know, that was in 16, whatever it was, and 15 and 18. And I was telling somebody the story. I said, well, let me just ask you a question. I was talking to somebody about this afterwards when I came home. I said, let me run something by you. I said, you're Irish, I'm Irish, yeah. Don't we have a little edge towards the English people? And they're like, well, yeah, you know, we do. I said, well, we weren't alive then. We weren't alive in 1916 during the Easter Uprising. We weren't, you know, some of our families, some people might have been affected by the black and tans coming in and beating up the Irish back in 1950. We still hold grudges about that as Irish people. Do you think it's that easy just to forget the past? Do you think it's that easy, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations, to say, well, it was okay now? I said, we didn't forget it. And I think that what we have to do as we move forward here in that museum, when I got to the very top of that museum, and seeing the president, obviously, was one of the prominent ending displays. I thought about the struggles of folks from the 1400s to 1968. And then I thought about how much has been gained from 1968 to 2008. And what's happened. Even though the actual blood shed might be a little different type of blood today, we still have work to do. And My Brother's Keeper Boston and My Brother's Keeper across the United States of America needs to continue on. This isn't about President Obama anymore. This is about the future of our young people in the United States now. That's what this is all about. And I want to bring you back to the White House. My last visit to the White House. It was incredible. I haven't been invited back since. I'm looking in the mailbox. I'm checking Twitter. I'm checking my email. I don't know what's wrong here, but I guess I'm not going back. So I took a good long look around last time I was there. And we were in that. We got a chance to. We went over to the president. What's the name of the building? It's the Eisenhower office building. And I went downstairs, and I was with Conan, and we were standing there, and we had a chance to meet the president, take pictures, and there were 6 young men on the stage. 2 young men were from Boston, out of the 6 young men on the stage. These 2 young men who are right here were part of panels, were part of conversations, carried themselves with pride, with dignity. They were Boston strong. They were proud of their heritage. And when they were on the stage talking, and when the president started talking, honestly, this is a true story. Conan and myself, I'm in the back of the room. I was giddy. I felt like it was my kids, because they are my kids. I was proud of the work that was done. And to me, that was for the president. Again, I had a chance to whisper in the president's ear again that day, that night. And it was the last time I had a chance to talk to him as the actual president of the United States of America. I saw him the other night and we talked about stuff. But I said to Mr. President, I said this, you probably don't remember this, but I said this to you 2.5 years ago, that Boston, Massachusetts is going to be the #1 My Brother's Keeper program in the country. And it was my intention on doing that. Why? Because we have an incredible, committed group of young people that are introducing you. We have an incredible group of people, men and women in the city of Boston who want nothing more than our kids to be successful and succeed. We have incredible elected officials who are dedicated. We might argue once in a while, but we're all focused on the right thing to make sure we create opportunities. Former State Representative Marie St. Fleur is here as well. I work with Marie. We worked on a bunch of things. We have people in our clergy, like Clergy Wright, Father Jack Ahern, Commissioner Evans just did a peace walk down the street with the 12th Baptist Church. I mean, we have the right feel for it. We can't let this program fail. We can't let this program fail, because on that stage that day, there were 6 young men, 6 young black men on the stage introducing the president. One of them introduced the president was actually ours. Malachi, thank you, bud. Did a good job. That's why we need to make sure this program's successful. This program's not about politics. This program's not about me getting political points, or Anna getting political points, or Russell getting political points, or anybody getting political points. That's not what this program should be all about, because it's not that. We shouldn't be getting into turf wars over who does what and does this, because it doesn't matter. I'm going to end with this in a second. The other day, I had an event down the street here, down Dudley, and I need to kill a half hour. So we got in my car, we got in the car, we drove up, we parked on the street right next door. We were going to Dunkin' Donuts to get a cup of coffee. And I looked over at the bank, and I saw at the bank probably 20 men, black men, in their ages, probably my age, 45 to 50. A couple had brown bags. A couple were hanging out. Everyone was happy, but just hanging. Just hanging. No place to go, no job to go to, probably problems from the past. I made some assumptions. Some might not have had that problem, but when I was seeing that, I was looking, I'm like, we can't have another generation of, whether it's black or white men, just hanging at the age of 50 years old in Dudley Square, or hanging down a park somewhere. You just can't have that. I'm not even going to blame them for doing that, because that's what they know. There's an opportunity right now. You can see Conan's passion. You can feel Conan's passion. When you look around the room, the people that I mentioned earlier, Will Morales is here from Boston Center for Youth and Families. Most of the people I mentioned a minute ago are all men and women, black and brown men and women, who are at the highest levels of City Hall's administration. That's what we need to do to make sure our kids know that they can shoot for the moon and shoot for the stars. I'm going to end with this. This is not a political speech. I don't want political credit for this. This is what I should be doing as mayor of the city of Boston. I don't need... I'm going to ask the reporters that are covering this event today, don't put me in the story. Put the kids in the story. Put the young people that talked about in the story. Put Conan in the story. Put Broderick in the story. We are going to continue to set an example around the country. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank the entire board. I want to thank everybody who's been part of My Brother's Keeper. To some of the older folks in the room that might not be part of My Brother's Keeper, I want to thank you for pushing our city. I want to thank you for what you've laying the foundation and the groundwork that we are where we're at today. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Hold your seats, we got more. We got a lot more. So one of the journeys that we've taken on is making sure that now we're getting to the phase where we can receive people involved in this work. Adding on to what we're already doing, building this to take on to the next level. It was so crucial and so important to bring other people along this process, to make sure that they are involved in this work that they do anyway. So it was so crucial and so important to bring on a board, a working board. Not a good-looking board, as beautiful as they are. Now, trust me, Miss Liz Walker, Reverend Liz Walker, you beautiful. You know? But to bring a working board on, people that you know they're dedicated towards this work, sincere about what we're doing to try to move the needle forward. And I want to bring up the two co-chairs, Brother Thaddeus Miles and Brother Joseph Feaster, to introduce our board.
So Conan asked me to say a few words, and so I'm gonna do two things. One is, what is MBK about for me? MBK is about really connecting people. And Doobie, where are you at, Doobie? I know Doobie's in here somewhere, but Doobie's my intern. He's a Morehouse student going into his senior year, and I want to make sure that all these other Morehouse brothers in here connect to him. Because we went down to Atlanta, Conan and I, a month ago, met Doobie for a half an hour. Doobie called Conan asking for a summer internship, and within an hour, there's Doobie right there. Good looking. Conan said, we're not good looking, but he's a good looking brother, right? But I'm gonna disagree with Conan, but we'll hold that debate another time. But within an hour, we had this young man an internship working, and he's gonna be working as part of My Brother's Keeper intern and part of Mass Housing's community services. And so I just wanted to say that's really what it's about. The other opportunity I had today was to be with MBK Alliance, Boston MBK, and 30 other amazing young men. And I'm gonna call them young men. We call them boys and young men, but they were all young men because they were standing up. They were upstanders. They were not bystanders. They were upstanders in their own life. You know, this amazing lift. But one of the things that I heard them say was that it was about the mindset that they have of achievement. What I heard them really say was, sometimes the enemy is the inner me. And Reverend Walker, I don't want to get on that sermon, but I might have to get there because people here are looking at me like they don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm gonna say that one more time. Sometimes the enemy is the inner me. And we are here to help them achieve their dreams. We are here to help them do their work. But we also have to do our own work. I don't want that to be lost, that it's all about these young people. It's also about us doing our work. And so with that, I'm gonna be quiet because y'all are being quiet and I don't want to preach to you too much. You know, so I'm gonna bring these folks up because somebody know how I get. So the first, I'm gonna introduce my 7 and then Joseph is gonna introduce his 7. So my first one is Mo Barbosa, Director of Community Engagement, Training, and Capacity Building, Health Resource and Action Plan. The next one is an amazing young man that you've already got to hear his story. I know it's a little bit of talking back there, but he had a powerful story that if you get a chance, spend some time with him, get to know him, support him. Devin Edwards, Legislative Aide to Representative Russell Holmes. The next one is my buddy that's me in the steakhouse. Me, him, and the steakhouse are the best of friends. Me and our tomahawk steaks. When you look at our bellies, you know why. Superintendent Chief Gross. Superintendent, but best friend, Chief Gross. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this young brother had me jealous for quite a long time. I'm sitting beside him over there, I'm still jealous because he's getting all this love from President Obama, and all I get to do is take a picture and look at him with my cell phone. You know what I mean? I'm still mad at Malachi Hernandez. A Northeastern student. The other brother that's doing an amazing work when it comes to mentors. And so I wanted to make sure that the young men and sisters that's in here today make sure that they sign up to be a mentor because that's important. We've achieved a little bit around the mentors. We've had over 1,100 with the first set, but now we need more mentors of color. So if you're a brother in here, step up, step up, step up. Marty Martinez, Executive Director of Mass Mentoring. My sister, my friend, that's doing an amazing job here at BPS. We talk about public schools and we talk about the challenges, but we don't always celebrate our leaders that's doing the work, that's worked hard, and we know their stories and what they're achieving. And she's got a beautiful young man, Gary, that she's working very hard to make sure that he has a successful life. Dr. Makiba McCurry, she's got a long title. School Managing Director and Senior Advisor of External Affairs, Boston Public Schools. And the last brother is changing lives every day, but I want to make sure I pronounce his name right because we're at a Brothers Keepers Board meeting and somebody said Joel, and he's like, no, Joel Mora, Education Program Manager at Hyde Square Task Force. And the next brother, I know you all know, my co-chair, Joe Feaster.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. I'm a Baptist. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. I know, Reverend Walker, you can appreciate that statement. I just want to say, as I look around this room, I see a lot of friends, colleagues, and persons I've worked with across the years in so many different aspects here in our community. So we standing up here are only a portion of the great work, as Conan has said earlier, is being done. I would be remiss, I didn't have the opportunity to go to the program today, but Mr. Broderick, Conan has talked so highly about you before. I thought he wanted to go on to Washington and work in the administration about the work that you were doing. But I am so pleased that you, along with our president, was able to put this together. But I also want to talk about, I'm going to call him the man of the hour, a friend of mine who I've known from the days when he was a state representative, our mayor, Marty Walsh, and what he's doing in terms of this particular effort and around the city. Let's give him another hand for what he's doing in terms of here. Because notwithstanding the great passion that you heard evidence here by both Mr. Broderick, the mayor, and from Conan and others, it takes the type of, in this type of environment, for those of us who have been in Boston, I always tell folks I'm a New Yorker, born in the Bronx, raised in Queens, worked in Brooklyn, partied in Manhattan. I'm a New Yorker. I came here in 1967 to come to college, and I see many of my colleagues from Northeastern here today. But I'm standing up here today because I oftentimes now tell folks, even though I'm not a golfer, that I'm on the 16th hole heading to the clubhouse. In fact, I tell the golfers, I'll meet you at the 19th hole, and that is lunch. That's the only way that you're going to get me anywhere near the course. But the reality is there was a man here, and you heard his passion earlier, which woke me up, woke Thaddeus up, woke those of us who have agreed to serve on this, because we're busy people. We have things that we have to do. But if you get a call from Conan Harris telling you that this is an effort that you need to be in, that we need to take care of the young brown and black boys in our community, no matter what stripe or where you are, male or female, when you get that type of call, and I, who had a son, I lost my son in 2010, so I understand the realities of what we must do in this community. When you get a call from Conan Harris, you're going to say, yes, I'm going to serve. He has the passion. He has the commitment. Give him a hand, because we're here because of his efforts. And Conan, I know Mom likes that, so therefore I'll give it for her. So I'm going to do the task that they asked me for. I just had to say that because the men and women who I'm serving with on this body are committed, And as Thaddeus, my fellow co-chair, said, those of you out there, you don't need to be in this effort. Certainly, we want you to be in this effort from the standpoint in whatever manner you can. We need, as I say, we need your time, we need your commitment, we need your dollars, we need your support. This is a full-out press. Some of us, as I said, are moving on to another place, and we want to make sure folks like Devin and Malachi have a foundation, and it's our responsibility in this community to make sure that that happens, and we're going to get it done. Trust me. So let me introduce the remainder of the board of MBK Boston. James Morton, colleague, friend, Northeastern Law School alum, president and CEO of the YMCA here in Greater Boston. I don't need to tell you about the Y. I always tell folks I'm a Flushing Y kid from New York, so I know very much about the YMCAs. Let's give James a hand. The support for this comes from all stripes. And there's been a gentleman that's been working closely along with Conan in his work in public safety for the Mayor's Office of Public Safety, and that is the Director of the Mayor's Office of Public Safety, Dan Mulhern. Dan was here earlier, and I'm sure that he's Mr. Mayor, taking care of public safety matters here in the city. Well, as a person who says I'm his A1 from day one, my mentee, the Executive Director of the Strive and Vice President of Programs for the Justice Resources, Edward Powell. Marta Rivera is the Director of the Greater Boston Latino Network. She has been involved with us, but she's not able to be here this evening. But as I said, we are covering the breadth of our community, engaging everybody. This is the big tent, and we're going to get the job done. Let's give Marta in her absence a hand. Freddie Velez, the Executive Director of Youth Options Unlimited, or U, here in Boston. Good. Let's give Freddie a hand as he comes. The mayor mentioned our ministers, our persons of faith here in the city. Certainly, we could not have an effort such as this where there wasn't that type of representation in many forms, and I'm going to bring up two, but I'm going to go with one first in terms of, because I've learned two things, one alphabetically as well as in terms of women before men. So I'm going to do my thing as I was raised. I'm first going to bring up our fellow member, the minister of Roxbury Presbyterian Church, and also the Walker Group, the great Reverend Liz Walker. And certainly, last but not least, when we talk about our ministers, there's also those who need to provide the foundation, the glue, in order to the work that the ministers do for this in this city, for all of us. The Executive Director of the Black Minister Alliance, David Wright. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the board of MBK Boston. I would ask for this picture that Conan, the mayor, and Mr. Broderick join us for the picture.
This part of it as well is to talk just a little bit about people who have done this work in our community a great deal. One of the things that's important is to recognize folks for their deeds and for the work that they've put on display in our city. I asked the mayor and Broderick to stand with me because as we acknowledge them, we want to make sure that they're there as well. So the first person that I'm going to bring up is Brother Mel King. Mel King gets the My Brother's Keeper Award for personifying the mission and value of My Brother's Keeper, dedication to education, social justice, second chances, mentorship, and community empowerment. Let's give it up for Mel King.
Wow. I'm really touched and honored by the award. Wasn't sure what kind of context, but I wondered if your permission, I could read something that I wrote some 20 years ago. Some of you will recognize the names, but it's called Notes to Youth. I would add adults. What's your mission? And as I sat here, it became obvious that it was important to know what our mission was. Fanon, a noted black African psychiatrist, said, each generation out of relative obscurity must fulfill its mission or betray it. Each generation must fulfill its mission or betray it. I was looking at the young people at this time, and I wrote this because I was disturbed about a crisis of such proportion that it's difficult to put a label on it. That is why I asked the youth to think, what's your mission? Gil Scott-Heron sings, it's your world, what do you want it to be like? Marvin Gaye says, save the children, who really cares? And tries, do you? And the Blue Notes sing, wake up everybody, it's time to teach a new way. Have you told your teachers what you need to fulfill your expectations and dreams? Isaac Hayes sings, windows of the world, are you tired of tears? Our music has spelled out our miseries and hopes, blues and beauty, hard times and hard-fought rights. It is poked, wrapped question. By looking to our music, this is what we need to do now. We need to heighten our awareness in our lives by looking deeply within ourselves and long and hard outside of ourselves. Has self-love given away to self-hate? For me, this was dramatized by an act of destructive behavior which occurred a few weeks ago when one of you fired several shots at himself because he could not get access to a dance hall. I say himself because it was at his image before him. He was shooting at his brothers, sisters, peers, and friends. Has the essence of Earth, Wind, and Fire song, "You are a shining star, no matter who you are," disappeared? What makes him think so little of himself to do that? The Funkadelics sing, "Everybody has a little light under the sun." Why then are so many of you dimming your vision, insight, and energy? Has hopelessness and despair partnered with escapism and become a routine disregard for oneself? I start with that because I think that the concept, the idea of our brother's keeper is essential if we are going to get our youth and adults to understand our mission and believe in it so that we make this community, this world, the one that allows us to bring up all the children with the love that says we care because we know that the power of love is what we're talking about that will bring us together with that, because the love of power builds fences, but we know that the power of love opens doors. Thank you.
Shift a little to your right. I got you.
Do you want the Pope?
Yeah, I think Conan has it.
Where's his board?
Yeah, Conan has it.
Excellent. Take it. You want to go? Yeah, go ahead. All right. 1, 2, 3. One more. Thank you. One more time. Go. Thanks so much. Congratulations.
I made one mistake. I didn't introduce Joyce King. She's here.
Recognize Joyce King. Real quick, I just think that it's so important and so crucial to recognize folks and people that have paved the way. I thank God for Brother Mel King. I am because he was. The next person I would love to bring up, this brother here who's been doing this work for a very long time. In the Latino community, in the African American community, in our city as a whole. He's another trailblazer. This brother is Felix D. Arroyo. I want to give this award to Felix D. Arroyo for your tireless advocacy and work on behalf of our communities of color and for transforming the city of Boston for future generations of leaders. I just give it up to this brother, Felix D. Arroyo. We love you.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored and feel so humble. I have to acknowledge that everything I learned about community participation, about activism, about seeking justice, I learned from figures and people like Mel King, John O'Brien, Jim McGuire, and the like. I was honored to be part of his campaign and feel the city would have been better if we have had a Mel King mayor. One of the things as a Latino that I tell my children is that we need to learn the history of struggle and justice that Boston have. It's a rich history. The black community have always been in the front line of working for justice. And we need to learn as Latinos about that. I say it everywhere I go, because if we want to work for justice, we have to build on what struggles have been done before us. We cannot create a new process. We have to be part of that process. That's why unity is so important for us. That's why we have to work together for the same things, because they affect us in the same way. Well, you know my struggle at this point. You understand that, and those of you who doesn't know it, just have to take a look at the papers and Google it. But it's strange to go to a court system and find out that the people that we serve are not reflected in their staff. And to fight to make sure that that staff is reflective of that communities of color, and to find that that seems to be an obstacle for justice. Well, I'm going to tell you one thing. You know, there has been a full investigation by a supposed independent source. They interviewed 68 people, among them people of the main office and people who work with me in all the process. You know what they found that I did wrong? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because none of those people dared to say other but the truth. So for me, it's now a negotiation to go back to the court. And all I'm asking is for them to respect the role that I was elected for, and to make sure that the things that we fight for are respected. You know what I'm going to do when I go back? More of the same. I'm honored that I was a part of the unity team in the city council, because that was the first time that we have the people of color coming together to create policies that affected our people in these communities. And we need to fight for it. We need to continue fighting, because this has not stopped. So when the mayor saw to it that we have a program like this in the city of Boston, I was very glad, because the mayor proved that he should be the mayor of Boston, because he cared about the communities that he served. And I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for doing it. Mr. Harris, you're doing a great job. And all of us should be supportive of what you're doing and add to it. We have to do that with our actions, because our young people need us, and the fight has not ended yet.
I just want to give another round of applause to Felix Arroyo. Thank you for all that you do, seriously. This next brother that I'm gonna bring up to the stage, this award, by the way, all these awards are named after these individuals. So next year when we have an award, it will be the Mel King Award, even if it's not Mel King. Next year will be the Felix D. Arroyo Award, even though it is not Felix D. Arroyo. It is so crucial and so important to recognize our leaders, what they've been able to accomplish, and make sure that we're naming things after them, their legacy, and recognizing the work that they put forth. This next award is named after another giant that is no longer with us. I see his beautiful wife and partner, Joyce Bolling, right over there. I want to just give a shout out to Joyce. Joyce is a family friend, and she's family to me and my family, so it is an absolute pleasure for you to be here. But this building right here is named the Bruce Bolling Building. No, I want to say it. This building right here is named the Bruce Bolling Building. So it's only right that we give another award named after the Bruce Bolling Emerging Leader Award. This brother that I'm going to bring up is a dear friend. I love him to the end of this earth. He doesn't even know I'm going to call him. That's how beautiful this one is. So the Bruce E. Bolling Emerging Leader Award goes to Brother Greg Hill. Real quick, this is for Greg's commitment to elevating young men and boys of color through education, advocacy, and most importantly, by leading by example. Let's give it up again to my brother, Brother Greg Hill.
You funny. You know, to get an award today on the same, platform as a Mel King or Felix Arroyo is huge, and Thaddeus Miles and myself was laughing today and joking at the Burke High School, and we were talking about this work. And, I hear so much and so often that I'm doing great work, and I don't even know I'm doing great work. It's just about the work, and I just do it. And he used the analogy as sometimes as fathers, we say, oh, he's a great dad. And, no, we're just dads. We're not necessarily great dads. We're just doing what we're supposed to be doing. And that's what I do on a daily basis. I'm blessed because what I do is my calling in life. And it's blessed to get up and do something every day that I absolutely enjoy. I could be having a bad day in other areas of my life and go into the Jeremiah Burke High School, and the faces of these young people just brighten my day. But real quick, I just want to acknowledge 3 people that's in the room today. My brother Conan Harris. Conan has always been supportive of the Jeremiah Burke High School. Anytime I call on him, he's right there. He was a mentor to a young man last year. And, I can't say enough about Conan and his commitment to our young people. So I just want to say thank you, Conan. Another person I want to mention, and I knew this gentleman for about 25 years, and he and I pretty much grew up together. And, we laugh and joke because we always say, like, who knew 25 years later, look at us making so much of a different of an impact on our youth. And I'm so proud of him. He's the director of BAM Boston, and that's Sean Brown. Executive Director BAM Boston, sorry. And last but not least is one person that saw all of this in me when I was about 15 years of age. And she saw greatness in me and potential in me when I didn't necessarily see it in myself. She's like a mother to me. My mother passed away about 4 years ago, and she filled a void, as my mother, and she's always been there for me. And it's a pleasure to be working with her on a daily basis. And that's Dr. Lindsay McIntyre, headmaster at Jeremiah Burke High School. And I just want to end with this. I'm here and I do this work on a daily basis because I feel like I owe. I owe my community. At one point in my life, I was doing so much to take away from my community, so I'm forever indebted in my community. So the work that I do, I owe. I owe my community. I will forever owe my community, and it's just a pleasure, to do the work I do on a daily basis. And again, I just want to thank MBK for all the support for Jeremiah Burke High School. And again, just thank all of you and the leaders in the community. Thank you.
So now I'm going to bring up our MC of the night and MBK board member. Now I could publicly say that and say that with a smile. MBK board member, the Reverend Liz Walker. Please come on.
So we want to make sure that everyone participates in this conversation. So we're going to have an open conversation, but I'd like to introduce our panelists who are part of our board. First, Joel Mora, Ed Powell, Freddie Velez, and Malachi Hernandez. If you gentlemen would come up. We're going to talk about, and we're going to do as much conversation as we can in a limited amount of time. We're going to talk about the 3 of the milestones that are a part of MBK's goals. As you know, 3 of the milestones include graduating from high school, ready for college and career, successfully entering the workforce, and reducing violence and providing a second chance. So we're going to start with my questions to the panelists. Please feel free for all of you to just jump in, and then we're going to open it up if you have some questions in the audience. I'm going to ask this to Joel. In spite of the obstacles, we know that our Black and Latino boys, many of them are succeeding against all odds. What are the key factors, you would say, behind that success?
Thank you, Liz. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. All right, so I'll try to make my comments really brief, and it's been mentioned throughout the night. And I look to Marty for this, Marty Martinez. The key word here is mentoring. All right, the key factor to a success for a young man of color is mentoring. Now, I'm one of many people in the city that do this work on the ground, and I constantly see and work with young men of color who constantly tell me I don't have that role model in front of me. I don't have that teacher that looks like me. I don't have that teacher or parent that I can rely on. And so giving back is very critical for the success of our young people in this city. And in many ways, and this morning I was blessed to also be at the Burke, it's important for the young men, or not just young men, but young people of color, to recognize they have the ability, and I love the way Mel King had said it, the love of power builds fences, but the power of love opens those doors. And in order for that to happen, you need these young people that have that space to open that door. Everyone in this room is a key holder for that door. And that means everyone in this room has the potential to give back, to be a mentor. Allow that young person to open that door. And many factors that play into that for some people that can't mentor is being fearful of mentoring. And we can't allow that to happen. If we're holding those keys, we need to give those keys to the young people to be able to open those doors. There was a young man this morning with one quick quote that I have to say. He wrote this down on paper, and I quote, "Crayons may be different colors, but they are still equal. Why aren't we?" All right? Give this young person a space to allow to question that and watch the magic happen. And this morning, like I said, I was blessed to see that happen. And this young man is very talented, and he's on his way. So hopefully, one of the key main factors is mentoring, and you have to give back.
Thank you very much, Joel. I'm going to ask you this, Malachi, because we talked about this a little earlier before we got together tonight, about the fact of Boston, you have mainly people who are not of color mentoring. You have many mentors in Boston. There are many really powerful programs, important programs, but we don't have as many people of color mentoring. I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that. So Malachi, how important is it for you, do you think, or for any young man of color, to have someone who looks like him?
I think that is really, really powerful when you have someone who looks like who you can relate to, who you can share your experiences with. You have similar stories. And speaking of my experience with my mentor, Michael McDonald, I've related to him on so many levels. We both grew up in low economic standards. We didn't attend the best schools, but we found a way to overcome that obstacle in our life and really achieve and persevere through it all. And I think that it all starts with the representation. It all starts with the representation of having individuals who look like you, having someone who you can really be authentic with and be genuine with, and just share your deepest vulnerability with. And there's times where I've even talked to a number of youth, and they feel as if they can't relate to some of the teachers in their school or some of the after school professors because they don't look like them. And it's difficult when they don't look like them, because it creates that distance between the two, and that's unfortunate. So we should really work to create that.
So we really do need mentors. I'm going to ask again, I know it's hard because we've been here for a while, but particularly when Malachi is speaking, when all of us are speaking, please give us your attention, because this is an important conversation. So if you have to speak with each other and greet each other, please just move out, because we can hear you, okay? Thank you very much. My next question is the second preamble, and this is about the second milestone, please forgive me, successfully entering the workforce. And this question is for Ed. And Ed, how do the most successful schools, organizations, and workplaces narrow the gaps between majority young men and young men of color, equalizing the playing field for everybody in finding jobs and getting employment?
So I would say, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me now? So I would say it's the 3 E's: exploration, exposure, and engagement. When I was a career specialist years ago at a high school, one of the things that I would ask kids is, what do you want to do for a career? And most often the answers were, I want to be a pediatrician, I want to be a lawyer, a defense attorney, I want to be an athlete, I want to play in the NBA. Now you got as much chance of making the NBA is getting hit by lightning in the same spot 3 times. But these kids didn't see it that way, because the positions that they mentioned was what they thought was their reality, are things that they could relate to. I think what we have to do in the exploration phase is to turn on the light, to get them to look at other things, to get them to see a different reality. And when you're able to do that, you can see success. The next thing is exposure. And exposure is an internship, a job. And Boston, I think we do this very well. We get kids private sector placements. And private sector placements are important because we try to put kids in situations that they might not normally be in. And if you can put them in situations where they might not normally be in, that's when the engagement piece becomes important. And when I think of engagement, I think of mentoring. Mentoring, and it is really important that you do see somebody who looks like you. My parents were very, very involved in my life. My father was there front and center every day. But my father couldn't teach me about college. He couldn't teach me about a professional career path because he just didn't know. And I was able to acquire in my travels mentors who could be able to help me. My A1 from day one, Joe Feaster, was my mentor. Any professional decision that I made, he was able to help me with. He was able to work through that with me. And so if you're talking about these worksite experiences for young people, it's getting them in places that they might not normally be in, getting them a mentor, and being able to turn on a light that wasn't there before.
Okay. I'm going to ask the third question to Freddie, and then we're going to open it up for everyone to get into the discussion. But as I mentioned earlier, for the same offense, black students are 3.5 times more likely to be suspended or expelled than their white peers. Black students as young as 5 are routinely suspended and expelled from schools for minor infractions. Despite using and selling drugs at rates similar to those of their white counterparts, African Americans and Latinos comprise 62% of those in state prison for drug offenses and 72% of those sentenced for federal drug trafficking offenses. What should we do to help our young men avoid these pitfalls? And we're talking about the third milestone, which is reducing violence and providing that second chance. Freddie?
Well, first of all, can folks hear me? Yes. So first of all, I think what we need to do is what we're doing here today. Putting together programs like My Brother's Keeper to support other young men of color, so that they don't have those pitfalls. And when they're there, when they do have them, we're there to lift them back up. So that's the first thing. Second of all, is offering them second and third chances. Our mayor talks about it. He lives, he tells his story all the time of how he needed a second, a third, a fourth chance, and he's offered an opportunity to young folks, such as Devin, to have a second and a third chance and a fourth chance within this city. Programs such as Professional Pathways that offered Devin an opportunity to intern with Felix Arroyo Jr. In the Office of Health and Human Services is exactly what we need. That exposure that Ed is talking about, that connection, that body that's willing to sit there and mentor and support our young people through their good and their bad. When they're down and they need us is key in the success of our young people. We're able to run a program for folks who need a second chance, who oftentimes don't get a second chance through the mayor's office and his connections to the trades and the unions. And that program was called Operation Exit. And that program offered 49 folks an opportunity not only to just get a job, but to get a career that's going to provide above living wage, that they're going to take care of themselves and their families. And programs such as Operation Exit, programs such as professional pathways is what we need so that our young people are successful, as we can see.
Okay. I'm going to throw it open to make sure that we're all involved